Hello, friends out there in YouTube land. This is an AP Environmental Science, and today we're studying ways to reduce air pollution. Thanks for joining in. Let's read number 30 in our notes. Number 30. Y'all like that voice? Is it good? Is it pleasant? Is it a little creepy? It's not authentic. That's the problem. People want authenticity, Luke. Wet and dry scrubbers are air pollution control devices that remove particulates and or gases from the industrial exhaust streams. Now, y'all need to write that last part in, the industrial exhaust streams. What does that mean, industrial exhaust streams? What is that in reference to? Because those are big words that we haven't really talked about. But I suspect you can figure them out.
Streams of water.
And streams of water, no.
Is it industrial
Exhaust from your car.
It says industrial.
So is it
Like
big
the
factories like
smokestacks.
smoke?
Big old places that have a bunch of exhaust.
Big old places that have bunches of exhaust. Yes, so large factories, it could be power plants that have lots of exhaust. So industrial exhaust streams, meaning it's the movement of exhaust through and out of that plant, okay? So wet and dry scrubbers are air pollution control devices to remove particulates. So one of the main pollutants that we discussed is particulates like PM 2.5. Now, I took the air quality meter that we have home last night with the intentions of measuring particulate matter in my home since we use a wood stove. And I definitely had the wood stove going last night. And I also definitely forgot to pull it out of my lunchbox until this morning when I saw it, and I was like, dang. So, if I remember when I get home, I'm going to test the air quality outside, then I'm going to test it inside, and then I'm going to turn the heater on, or fire the heater. It takes a while. It takes about 30 minutes to get it going good. And then I'm just going to try to measure the air quality about every hour or so and see how it changes in the house. I don't think it's going to get very high. I'm going to keep it in the kitchen where our wood heater is, but I will keep you posted and see. Oh yeah, and speaking of taking measurements, I had my kids yesterday. Last night I took home the fresh eggs from our chickens out in the courtyard there. I don't know. It could have been one or two just laying for like the past week, so who knows. So I took those home and made a video on cooking or scrambling eggs. Anybody here know how to scramble eggs?
I do.
Oh, that's everybody. Good. How many of y'all have actually scrambled eggs?
You learned that in like
Mr. Mack,
Good
I
job.
was cooking an egg on the gas stove and the power went out.
And the power went out?
It was storming outside and it was pitch black and my egg was just still cooking.
Still cooking your egg. That is the benefit of having a gas stove, is when the electricity goes out. I'm wondering how long that'll last for you, though. That's a good question, because the word around the campfire in the news article I read this morning said that President Biden is putting forth a policy plan to eliminate the use of coal, oil, and natural gas by 2035 for electricity production. So I don't know if that will affect home usage or not, but it was definitely geared toward removing those sources in the use of electricity production, which is the majority of our electricity production. I'm not sure exactly what he was planning on replacing those with. I assume it to be solar and wind. It was kind of a pseudo Green New Deal. And without going too political, I'm always a realist and maybe a skepticist part of the time, but of having a transition away from fossil fuels completely in our electrical production, I cannot see it happening by then. In Alabama, I mean, we could probably get by with a pretty good bit of solar, but it rains here a lot, right? And then you've got nighttime, so that's an issue. And then wind, we don't have much wind. I mean, I don't think windmills would be worth the cost, to be honest with you. So I worry that we wind up in a scenario like in the video we watched about Germany, where you have a lot of investment in wind, you have a lot of investment in solar to get away from fossil fuels, but then you also have to have, like Germany still, has to use lots of natural gas to make up the difference when the wind and solar isn't working, and you have to turn up the knob to produce enough electricity. And also, it's a very expensive transition. I don't know if y'all remember, the price of electricity in Germany has went up dramatically compared to like their neighbors in France who were mostly dependent upon nuclear. So the next 15 years, as you guys grow up and get careers and buy homes and get married and have kids and whatnot, will be a very interesting time in our country to see what direction we move in. I'm totally for a movement away from fossil fuels and cleaner air, but I also think we have to be smart, and that's not even to mention some of the economic consequences where I would suspect China and India will still continue to use lots of cheap oil, coal, natural gas, and also cheap labor because they have so many people. So you also have to think about how you keep up with production of goods on a global stage and how you compare. Yeah, Jeremiah?
So what is the realistic solution?
I think I think the best solution probably is in places where you have lots of solar energy available, that you can use those as much as you can. In places where you have lots of wind, try to use that as much as you can. And then I would say if you're trying to get away from fossil fuels, then probably you have to make up the difference in nuclear at some point. So I don't know if I think if I were being realistic, some type of compromise in the middle, I would say as we phase out coal, we can transition more toward natural gas. And as natural gas becomes more difficult and more expensive, then that's when you maybe start converting those plants into nuclear. And then you still are able to supplement that with wind and solar. I would think that would be the smarter, best compromise for the environment too. I mean, obviously the best thing for the environment would be is if humans didn't live here and we didn't use anything because we're consumption machines, right? So my worry is that if the economy is dramatically affected by something like that, then, maybe we're living in the best time of America right now where the things are the cheapest and we've got the cleanest air and where, we have the most food available and have the most resources. And I don't know, maybe it's all downhill from here. Maybe it gets better. I hate to think that it's all downhill from here, but who knows? I don't know. Those are my concerns. And that still doesn't address the issues with, vehicles. So electric vehicles sound great. You need a lot of electricity. What about all the batteries? Are we going to keep letting kids in the Congo pull out precious metals out of the ground and paying them to do that, or ruining the soil and water in Bolivia getting lithium? So I don't know that there's a perfect solution. So it's a good question. I don't know. I know policy-wise that some people have very ambitious ideas, and I think Germany's probably a good lesson to think like you can't just go all wind and solar and think that that's going to supply your needs, because I don't think it's obviously not happening there. They've done a bunch of it, but it's not supplied all their needs. So we also need to be realistic in how we approach our policies. And I also think the other way of just saying let's just burn fossil fuels until it all burns out, it's not a good idea either. So oftentimes we find ourselves in some type of tribalism where I'm on one team or the other, and it's hard to see, maybe what's the best common ground in the middle. Y'all can tell I've been married a long time. Anyway, number 30. So wet scrubbers. We're going to look at these a little more closely in a second. Number 31. I'm going to read through this one, and then we'll go back in the book. And they've got some very good drawings and pictures, and I'll show you three people out there watching this, what they look like. Methods to reduce air pollution from coal-burning power plants include scrubbers and where did I go? And electrostatic precipitators. Now, that is listed at the bottom, on 422 there at the bottom, electrostatic precipitators. So we're going to go through here and we're going to look at these, and so I'll show you real quick on the screen here. This is what we're looking at. Up here we've got the baghouse filter. That's not mentioned, but that's just basically a filter similar to like a vacuum. On the bottom over here, we've got the electrostatic precipitator. And then over here on this side, for those of you watching at home, this is the scrubber device that's taking place. So, and I just kind of want you to evaluate these as we go through them and see which ones you think's the best. Here's a good question. Where do you think companies employ these devices? In what type of places? Where? Factories where?
In cities.
Maybe close to cities. I would say mostly, probably more so in developed countries. I would say probably less so in poorer countries. You know, a lot of companies will ship their operations overseas because it's much cheaper labor-wise. And also the environmental regulations oftentimes are not as good. So, and then what you see a lot of times is they get away with polluting a lot more in poorer areas. So that's one of those environmental justice topics that we talked about. Like, is it okay to have our dirty stuff made somewhere else and then we get the clean version and the good stuff and then everybody else has to deal with the problems? Or do we get to deal with the nice, pretty phones and TVs and whatnot, and we ship off the stuff to be recycled over to some foreign country for some little kid to burn in a open landfill? So these are things that we have to consider and think about. All right, let's look at the baghouse filter. Read that one for us, Donovan. Figure 1511.
The backhouse filter is in this air pollution control device, particles are removed by a series of filter bags that physically filter out those particles.
All right, number one, Layla.
Dirty air enters housing.
All right, so remember, this is like air coming out of an industrial plant. Number two, Jeremiah.
Combustion exhaust streams move through and dust particles are trapped in a series of filter bags.
Sophie, number three.
Negatively charged particles.
What in God's green earth are you reading? We're on the baghouse filter. Get off your phone.
I'm not on my phone. Cleaner, filtered air moves out of a unit.
There you go. Number four, DeQuinte.
A shaker mechanism is activated periodically to dislodge trapped particles, which can then be collected from beneath the unit.
All right, so what does this thing sound a lot like? A what? An air filter, a vacuum cleaner. Yeah, I mean, I like the vacuum analogy because you're running some kind of, you know, like you run dust or whatever through a vacuum and you've got a bag and it's collecting it. And somebody in second period's like, vacuums don't have bags anymore. How old are you? And that is true now. A lot of them just have like little cases where they collect it and then they have like a little pad or something that filters the stuff out. You just take it, dump it, and knock off the filter. You know what I'm talking about? How many of y'all actually vacuum at home? Congratulations. Caleb, you never vacuumed. You need to help out more. All right, so that's one way of filtering out industrial pollutants, okay? And let's look at 15.12, the electrostatic precipitator. What does precipitate mean?
It's condensed from water and steam.
Yeah, you're thinking about rain. So in general, though, precipitate means to come together and pull out of something. So it doesn't have to be a liquid, okay? Like when we do DNA extraction out of strawberries, you get the DNA to precipitate out of the solution and come together. So in this case, the same thing as Steph is talking about pollutants. The electrostatic, and so in this case, we're also using electricity to help do this. So it does require more energy and more time and investment, but it's much cleaner. Bella, will you read that for us?
In this air pollution control device, particles are given a negative charge. This causes them to be attracted to a positively charged plate where they are held. Periodically, they are removed from the plate and collected for disposal.
Okay, so let's talk about how this goes through. Number one, Jason.
Dirty air enters precipitator unit.
I see a pattern. Number two, Caleb.
Particles in combustion exhaust stream pass by negatively charged plates, which gives them a negative charge.
Okay, so they run by the negative charge. It makes the particles negative. Number three, Colby.
The negatively charged particles are attracted to positively charged collection plates.
Other Colby, what do we know about particles? What do we know about negative and positive?
Protons and
They attract.
electrons.
Opposites attract. That's right, you young lovers out there. Number four, Trent.
Cleaner air moves out of the unit.
Okay, so it's pulled out on those electrodes. Air filters out of the unit. Number five, Aiden.
The positive collection plates are periodically discharged, which causes the particles to fall off so that they can be removed from the system.
Okay, so and that's a way of discharging and getting rid of them instead of having to go in and scrub them off. So that's another method of removing those particles. And you could set up these, I guess, in order if you wanted to go through and remove different things at different stages. Like I said, it's just going to be more expensive. And then 423, the scrubber. So this one's pretty important, especially like in coal-fired power plants where you've got a lot of really noxious chemicals. You're trying to get all the mercury and all the sulfur and all that stuff out before it gets into the atmosphere. Like I say, I think this is probably going to be dependent on what kind of place you're living in, and whether how much they've got of these or how much they may use them, and because it's probably a pretty expensive process. So 1513, the scrubber. Read that one for us, Ashley.
In this air pollution control device, particles are scrubbed from the exhaust stream by water droplets. The water particle sludge is collected and processed for disposal.
Okay, so we've got some water. Basically, you're misting water as the exhaust moves up through there. The water particles get attracted to whatever the exhaust particles, and it falls out. Number 1, Rachel.
Dirty air enters scrubber.
Interesting. Number 2, Jordan.
Combustion exhaust stream moves upward in shower of water mist.
Andrew, number 3.
Mist collects particles, scrubs the air, and brings them down to the bottom of the unit.
Okay, basically you're taking a shower with the exhaust. Number 4. Who hadn't read? Donovan, go again.
Dirty water moves to a sludge removal system.
That sounds delicious. Removing the sludge. Number 5, DeQuinte.
Sludge is separated from water and disposed of.
Okay, so they separate most of the dirty sludge out. Number 6, Rachel.
Water moves back to scrubber for reuse.
Sophie. Oh, they reuse the water. I do like that. Number 7.
Excess mist collects on the stream.
And number 8, Jeremiah.
Cleaner air exits through static.
All right, so this one is what's the major pro and con of the scrubber? Sounds like.
Pro, it
Water is
reuses water.
Reusing the water.
No, that's not what I was thinking. What's the major pro?
It gets out a lot of the toxic.
I would think this is probably the cleanest one out of the bunch in terms of getting stuff out of the exhaust. What's the major con here?
A lot of water.
You still have to do something.
Well, you do have a lot of water, but you what?
You have to still do something with that sludge.
You got some sludge. So sludge is a little bit harder to get rid of and deal with than just the solid collection you saw in the other two. So that's something to consider. And I can imagine somebody in one of my classes, maybe one of you guys, becoming an engineer one day and working in a plant somewhere, and you have to think about this stuff. Like, where does the exhaust go? How is it disposed of? How can we better do a better job? I mean, how much money is it going to cost us? These are all things that you have to consider when you're working and running a plant. So, any questions? All right. We are going to watch a movie, and or a video on pollutants in. It says it's the most polluted city in the world. I know the one in Mongolia also, I think, claimed that. I guess we can find out here. But this one's in China, and so we'll find out. You guys out there, take care.